Well, when you came in, someone handed you a bulletin, likely me. And on the bottom right-hand side of the inside page, it gives the pretty much the title of the message, Happy Father's Day. We're going to be talking about Father's Day today. It really is a joy to see you. I so look forward to Sunday mornings. I love all of the small groups that meet here. I love the men's breakfast. I get so much out of that. I love the Sunday school, quick plug for Sunday school. It always preps me for what's to come in the service. Really, the weeks maybe we don't have Sunday school, I do feel a difference. There is something profound about kind of gathering together, sharing. I love hearing all the stories and the testimonies. There were some powerful ones this morning, so thank you for those who were a part of that. But I need this, you need this. There's something about God's people gathering together for the purpose of worship and hearing the word as we do so in his name, that it matters. And I keep saying that because our generation more and more is forgetting the significance of this. Many, many people in the church world, I'm not talking about the lost. I expect the lost to act lost. But many people in the church world are beginning to treat church like a hobby or an extracurricular activity. Gang, that's going to have to change if we ever really want to see the Lord do things in our nation. That's just some thoughts. And again, as we begin to talk about Father's Day and the role that dads play, oh, this is a time for the men of God to really rise up and become what God has called us to be. So I do want to say Happy Father's Day. As I kind of begin a little bit heavy, there will be some heavy sections to this sermon, just forewarning. This is not the traditional kind of super happy Father's Day. There's elements of happiness in it and great joy, but there's a sense of sobriety to the call of God. I'm called to be a pastor. I don't do it for a paycheck or because I feel some sense of obligation. This is a calling, and there's joy in that, but it's also, it comes with a corresponding sense of sobriety, that this matters. Dads, it's the same thing for you. So this morning, as I seek to really speak to the whole church, and I will be sharing principles that are applicable to everybody. If you're not a dad, if you're a mom, or if you're a woman, if you're kind of on the younger end of the spectrum, maybe you're a teenager, there will be parts of this sermon that will speak to you. Let them speak to you. But this morning, I really do want to speak to those of you who are dads. And you know what's interesting, because I want to bring forth a rather unique word. And I use the word unique deliberately because it's unique when compared to previous years. And I want to just explain why. I take some time now and then to go down memory lane, and I'll review my old sermon notes. I'll review previous Christmas sermons, or I'll review previous Thanksgiving sermons. A, I don't want to be repetitive. But B, it's kind of like looking at a diary. I don't keep a diary very well, if at all, but my sermons are a reflection of kind of where I am at each scene and stage of life. And as I was looking at my previous 8 or 9, I think 9 Father's Day sermons now, I began to realize that there was a common thread that connected them all. And it's not a negative, but none of them were founded upon my own personal experiences. They were founded very much upon the example of my father, Ken Foley, Lord rest his soul, as I was just blessed with the greatest of dads. And this is my first Father's Day without him. Definitely miss seeing him in the back left row. But may the Lord give him a big hug while you're up there. But so many of my sermons were based upon his example, his legacy, or what I see in the men of God that are in this assembly. You know, there's the Bubbas and the Rons and the Frans and others who I've looked traditionally to your example because I really couldn't speak from any specific experience. But over the course of the last year, I've had a pretty cool opportunity to play the role of father. And I want to share this morning from some things that are the overflow of my heart, things that speak to me, things that I've learned. And I want to say that I will be the first to say that my experience as a foster father is somewhat dissimilar to a typical dad. And for those who may not know, and for those who are joining us perhaps for the first time online for the last year, we've had the privilege of just taking care of the sweetest little girl. She does have to remain nameless for the sake of the recording, but those of you who attend here, I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about, right? Everybody nod, don't say it out loud, please. My experience as a foster dad is a little bit dissimilar to too many in some respects, and I just kind of jotted down a few that came to my mind. I could have made a laundry list, and it would have been a little bit funny to do so, but I'll give you a few to start. You may have 2 or 3 kids. By the time our journey is over, we may well have 20 to 30 children go through our home. You know, and many of you have seen us with the first one, and we love that little thing like she's ours. We love the ministry of serving children. So we are a foster home. You will see other kids at times, you know, come through our home. We get contacts and emails a lot. Do you guys want a sibling pair? Do you guys want this? Are you willing to take that? And kind of our answer as of late has been no. We really haven't felt the green light to do that, but there will be times that we will say yes. Our desire is still to have 1, 2, or 3. I hate the words of our own, and you'll see why I say that soon, adoptively or beyond. But we'd love to just be a place for children to find safety for a time. So you might have 2 or 3 kids, and Lord bless that. But we might have 20 to 30 at times. You may have 9 months to prepare for a child from the time that you really kind of hear the news. We might get 9 hours. I'll never forget with the first one, we got the email saying, congratulations, you folks are officially approved foster and pre-adoptive parents. P.S., do you want one today? Now, initially, and you guys know the story, and I'm going to be open today, I hope that's okay. If not, it's going to have to be, I guess I have the mic. We said we're willing to take ages 10 and under. Well, it's really hard to pre-buy things because the needs of an 8-year-old boy are not the same as a 2-year-old girl or an infant. So when we got the phone call or the email, actually, do you guys want, you know, a baby? Sure, but can you give us 24 hours? And we hit Babies R Us like a whirlwind, multiple carriages. Thankfully, they were going bankrupt, and I hate to say that, but they were just giving stuff to us, 90% off. We got like a beautiful monitor for like $15, I think. It was just, there was just deals going around. You may be able to forecast the gender and the ethnicity of your child. Ours is a bit more of the Forrest Gump experience. How many have never seen or heard of Forrest? I'm going to date myself. There's a few people you've not heard of Forrest Gump. Well, he has a line, life is like a box of chocolates, help the pastor out. You never know what you're going to get. So that's our experience. Now, you may be able to forecast the gender, the ethnicity, based upon your biology. For us, it's a bit of a, okay, you want to offer us a kid or numerous kids, what kind of kid are they? So it's never boring. You know, serving the Lord is always an adventure, by the way, and we just embrace that. I could go on and on regarding the differences between fostering, really the alleged differences, if you will, between fostering and biological or even adoptive fatherhood. But I want to note 3 areas this morning, if you're taking notes, of potential dissimilarity. In other words, areas that we can say that the experience of a foster parent is different than a bio parent. And I want to look a bit into this. I am going somewhere with this. I'm not just reading my diary to you. There's a purpose and a meaning behind this sermon, but I need to build a lengthy foundation. I want to say that being a foster parent requires an enhanced sense or recognition of stewardship. And you know, I love that in this church, it's not just Misty and me who serve as foster parents, but we have some others. One woman, I'll keep the names off of the recording, takes care of several little ones. She's on my far right, your far left, and then there's another family that's on the launching pad, and that phone call could come for them at any point. I'm continually reminded as a foster parent that the child that's in my home is not mine. Rather, as a steward, and that's a great Bible word, I am a manager and a caretaker and a custodian of that which belongs to another. And despite what my heart feels at times as a father figure regarding bondedness and connection, I have in my notes, and I'll try to get through it, the little girl in my home was never mine. Rather, she belongs to a set of parents and legally is a ward of the state. I am called to operate as one who is willing to house and feed and dress and nurture and comfort and raise and discipline and instruct and love a child who in no way legally belongs to me with all of the energy and dedication as a traditional parent. Failing to do so will result in the discipline and the potential judgment of the state of Massachusetts. Therefore, foster parents do live with an acute sense of stewardship, caring for the child of another. Number two, and this is a tough one, the idea of traumatization. Serving as a foster parent requires a willingness to deal with kids who have been victimized. There is a universal truth that you come to learn being a foster parent, that every child in the foster system, regardless of race or ethnicity, is the victim of some form of trauma. Not all traumas, in a sense, are created equal, but they are all real. And I'll give you a few potentials. Perhaps it was the trauma of being removed from their biological family and home. Now, you, from an intellectual place, may say it's a good thing for them to be removed, and it very well may be. But for a 3-year-old to be taken from their parents is always traumatic. Even our young foster daughter that we got at 4 days old, it was a trauma. There was a loss that was felt, and she manifested as an infant would. Believe it or not, even infants can manifest symptoms of loss and trauma. Isn't that amazing how we're wired? We really are fearfully and wonderfully made. Perhaps it was the trauma of neglect, as they were unkept and unfed. Perhaps it was the trauma, and I hate to even speak of these things, of physical abuse or molestation. Heinous violations. How anyone could hurt a child, to me, is unconscionable. Perhaps it was the emotional trauma of biological parents that when they're scheduled to visit, they don't. You know, I want you to put yourself in the place of an 8-year-old little girl who's looking forward to see mommy or daddy, and mommy and daddy doesn't show. Regardless of the caliber of foster parent and the love that is shown to that little thing, what do you think that communicates to her little heart? I'm unlovable. I have no worth. So they're victimized. Every child in the state's foster care system, over 11,000 by the way, as far as my research indicates, are victimized in some way, and here's the key that I want to kind of build to at this point. They will have to navigate the difficulties in the baggage that comes from that victimization. And foster parents have to contend with that. When we go through state classes in preparation for, and those of you who are foster parents can speak to some of the training, the state makes no bones about it. These kids are going to be dealing with some stuff. And as a foster parent, we have to be willing to deal with that. We have to understand the ways that that might manifest in their behavior or in their condition. And we have to be willing, despite the difficulty, to lovingly, compassionately heal and nurture and point them away from the dysfunction that they've experienced to proper health and what it means to live a life that is healthy and functional and whole. In other words, we have to work with brokenness, directing children who are broken to a place of health and function. And the final point that I have, and I'm going to build on this, I'm kind of building the foundation, I will begin to go up in a moment. Foster parents live with a heightened sense of time. Since the goal of the foster system is lawfully and nearly always reunification, in other words, it's always the state's goal to send the little one home, if at all possible. And that can be upwards of a 2-year process. You learn to live with the fact, no matter how much you try to suppress it, that the little one that you have in your home will only be there likely for a very limited amount of time. You only have so much time to positively impact and influence a child. A phrase I've come to like recently. You only have so much time to make an impression on the wet cement of their heart. You only have so much time to build, instill, or repair, if you will, a foundation that is suitable for the rest of their lives. You only have so much time and so many opportunities to nurture and comfort and encourage and train and pray with and love before they move on. That's just the nature of stewardship. As I mentioned recently, and again, this is a very personal message, as is evident, our little one is going back soon. And I am thankful for the year that we've had. It's been a good year. I will not cry today. AJ, edit all this out. But we live with the reality that once time is gone, it doesn't come back. It's a very hard thing to consider the finality of time, in wishing for more, knowing that it's not in your power. But I'll tell you as I transition that it forces you to live differently. It forces you to choose what you invest yourself in the time that you dedicate, in the things that you do. Now, as I'm saying all of these things, it's possible that there are thoughts going through your head. Number one, knowing this, why would anybody willingly become a foster parent? You know, I'm going to say this in the middle of the storm in some ways. I wouldn't undo it. I mean that. It's been a long process to get us to this point. I wouldn't undo it because it's been an opportunity to serve something and someone truly precious. And the opportunity to do it again with other children and to invest in them. I'm confident that when we stand before the Lord, despite my many failings as a human, we will hear, "Well done. And what you have done for the least of these, you've done unto me." I'm going to ask you, and it may seem hard, please don't feel bad for Misty and me. I don't feel bad for me. Don't pity us in outs. Pray for us. We will take that. But I wouldn't undo it for all the money in the world. And I'm telling you now, the Lord is in it, and he knows exactly what he is doing. You may be also thinking, I'm so glad that the things the pastor is talking about, that it's not true of my experience as a biological parent. Can I help you with that? Everything that I've shared is absolutely true concerning your experience as a father, as a mother. And if you're a young person, you don't have kids yet, there are principles here that are profound. It is true that being a foster parent requires an acknowledgement of stewardship, that we are the caretakers of another's child. But for those of you who are biological or adoptive parents, you are still but a steward. You serve as a manager and as a caretaker and as a custodian of a child that ultimately and entirely belongs to the Lord. It is a mistake to think that your child is truly your child in a possessive sense, because I assure you, regardless of your bondedness and connection, that child is really never yours. They are entrusted to you by the God that fashioned them. Psalm 24 says the following: "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." It is true that you operate as one who is called by God to house and feed and dress and nurture and comfort and raise and discipline and love that child that has been entrusted to you. And what a privilege that is, but also what an obligation. And I want you to hear me clearly here. Failure to do so will be accompanied by the discipline, and I would say the potential judgment of the Lord. Misty and I live under the auspices, in a sense, of the state of Massachusetts as those who are entrusted to care for children of the state. If you are a parent in any sense of that word, God has given you a child. You will have the conversation with him one day. How did you do with what I gave you? Jesus said the following: "Again, the kingdom of heaven will be likened to a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent. By the way, I did some research. A single talent, was incredibly, incredibly precious. It is the equivalent of 20 years of a day laborer's wage. Think about that. Let's say the average laborer makes $35,000 a year. Multiply that by 20. That's what this wealthy person was entrusting to these people. Some 5, some 2, some 1. But the story doesn't end there. There was a time where that wealthy person came back, and then he began, it says, to settle accounts with them. They began to have the conversation with, "What I gave you, how did you do?" And we kind of know how that story ends. There were those who were faithful, and there were those who were not. Many Christians would be far better parents if they took this principle to heart. That you are a steward and you will be called to account. Is there a sobriety in that? Yeah, you better believe it. I have this in my notes. Your highest calling in life is not to develop a Red Sox or a Patriots fan. It is not to educate them and prepare them to be productive, wealthy, and successful citizens. I will put forth that all of those things are good in their place. Your primary goal is to raise them in the fear and in the knowledge of the Lord, and to do everything that you can to prepare them for a relationship with Jesus Christ. And though you are not necessarily responsible for the results, they will have to make their own choice. You are called by God to train that child up in the way that they should go. I heard the statistic recently, I believe it was from one of our members of the board, and I'll have to do some research to find this, but something like 85 to 88% of people who come to know the Lord, it's by age 7. You know, when I was first going through Bible school, it was by age 14. By age 14, you have to reach them because after that, the numbers do begin to kind of drop. Now it's age 7. It never ceases to amaze me how many people, when they're raising young ones, will fill their schedule with everything but the Lord. And then when the kid is 30, they'll kind of get serious about the church and the kingdom. Wow, what a mistake. I could go hard on that point. But I'm looking at a generation of people that the trajectory is not healthy. It's just not. And you can thank the Lord for our dear sister Ginger and Christy and for the people who will pour into your kids. But you better understand that they really will never have the impact spiritually that you can have. You are called to be the one to model for them Jesus. You're a steward. If you have young children, get this lesson now. Now, if you're further down the road and maybe you didn't do it perfectly, the Lord is good and He's gracious and He's restorative by nature. I wasn't raised in a Christian family and the Lord got a hold of me, so it's possible. But I'm just saying, avail yourself of your opportunities while you have them. Number 2, being a foster parent does require a willingness to receive and love and work with kids who've experienced trauma and have the baggage to show for it. And this point I want you to follow me closely on, because really it is the same for you. I have in my notes, do you realize that every child born on this planet, regardless of parentage, so I'm talking about your little one, has the ultimate deadbeat dad who has inflicted great harm? Who am I talking about? You ready for this? Adam. If you are a human, everybody's a human, right? We do have AI these days and robots and crazy times. But if you're a human, you have the ultimate deadbeat dad. Because from Adam, biblically, you inherit 2 things. We can go super deep on this. I'm going to keep it real surface. According to Romans 5, you inherit 2 things. Number 1 is guilt. Just by virtue of being connected to him biologically by birth, you are automatically guilty. That might seem unfair to you. It's just Bible. We have to deal with it. But number 2, we inherit a fallen nature, which means we are now inclined to do the wrong thing. Be honest, by the raising of a hand, my hands are already up. How many people find it easier to do the wrong thing more often than not? You hear gossip. Your instinct is not to stand up and say, "Stop gossiping, you." It's to be a part of it. Your boss corners you at work. "Hey, did you do X, Y, or Z?" And you don't want to fess up to that, so it'd be easier to lie. They'll never know. It comes so easily for us to do these things because really, apart from Christ, we're fallen creations. We're depraved, we're crooked, we're ruined. So you have your little one, mom and dad. I don't care how old they are. They've been victimized already, and they already have the baggage to show for it. And their only hope is for someone to point them to a Savior who can save them from their guilt and from their own fallenness. This is a truth that you cannot gloss over. Oh, my little Johnny's a little angel. Maybe to you. But little Johnny still needs Jesus. You can't downplay the reality of sin in their lives. You have to point them to a Savior. You have to model for them the reality of a Christian life. And you have to be patient and loving and compassionate as you seek to steer them to Jesus and to help them overcome their doubts, their unbeliefs, and their natural inclination to do the wrong thing. God has put you in their life to serve as a guardrail so that they don't go off the cliff. Play that role. Ephesians 6 says the following, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother." But then it continues on. The Apostle Paul kind of hones in on dads for a second. Fathers, don't exasperate your children. That's a great big word. College word of the day, exasperate. It means don't drive your child to a point of irritation and frustration. Because, Dad, maybe you have so many rules and such a high standard that they can never reach it and it's graceless. Don't drive them to that place. But do instruct them and train them in the Lord. You have a role to play to help undo the victimization and the baggage by pointing them to Jesus. Final point, and I'm going to begin to move to a close with this. Being a foster parent does require a sense of time and a recognition that you only get so much time. In the case of a foster parent, it could be days, weeks, months, or even years at times. But the same is true of you. You may have decades, and I pray that you do. You might have many, many years to invest in them as they go through their seasons of living. I think of my father. I think of him often. And I'm not afraid to mention him often either. He had something like 35 to 40 years to pour into this life. And he took every advantage of it. And I'm the better for it. And even though I miss him like crazy and think of him often, the influence of that man continues on in a sense. But August 6th, 2018, that was the end point. That's when he passed. There is no more time between Ken Foley and James Foley until I see him again in glory, and hopefully he lives somewhere near my mansion. Hope we're in the same neighborhood. You may have decades, Mom and Dad, but hear me clearly, and it's really a Lord forbid thing. You may not. You know, I think Ron made the point a few weeks ago talking about D-Day and the Memorial Day and these kids who stormed a beach, and one of the things that enabled them to do that was a sense of invincibility. When you're young, you think you're invulnerable. You're not. Your child's not. James 4, what is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while, and then it vanishes. In other words, our life is as fleeting as that mist that appears, and then it's gone. Ephesians 5, you be very careful how you live, the Apostle Paul said. Not as those who are unwise, but as those who are wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Don't be foolish, he says, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Jesus put it this way. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day, because night is coming when no man can work. In other words, Jesus recognized he only had a very small window of opportunity to accomplish all of the things that he accomplished. Consider what he did in just a few years. If you really sat down and considered that everything that we talk about Jesus doing was over a 3-year span of time, it is monumental and mind-boggling. Jesus lived with the awareness, my time is limited. I have to maximize it. We're called to live that way too, and there's wisdom in that. I love the prayer from Psalm 90. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. I made the comment that knowing that July 1st, the little one goes back, has adjusted how Misty and I live. There are things that we're saying no to, so that we are free to say yes to other things. We're saying no temporarily to hanging out. People say, let's hang out. We only have a few more days. We'll see you in July, I promise. But we're saying yes to things as well. We're saying yes to spending as much time with her as we can. Can I step on some toes here? We're also saying yes to church. Because there's only so many opportunities to invest in that little life. And don't think that at age 1, she doesn't already pick up on stuff. If you watch her during worship, you notice she's raising her hands already? Oh, it would be tragic for me to have missed half of the last year because I had other stuff going on. Yeah, but you're a pastor. Well, long before I was a pastor, I was a Christian, and I never forgot that. You can't kill time, it says, without injuring eternity. Whatever time you have, parent, mom, dad, even young person, those without kids, make the most of it. Make the most of every opportunity. And I close with this. As parents, spiritual, adoptive, biological, or foster, I'm calling you this morning to recognize the reality of your stewardship. You have been given something precious. It's God's. There will be an accounting. Commit yourself to raising that poor little victimized kid by sin, by pointing them to a Savior who can truly bring forth change and salvation. And finally, make the most of the time while you have it. Make the best possible impression on the wet cement of their hearts. And if your kid is 4 months, or 40, they still need your example, your words, your testimony, and beyond. I do want to say Happy Father's Day to you. Men of God, on the sound of my voice, we honor you. We live in a generation that mocks and ridicules the role that you play. Let me just affirm from a biblical place that you reveal so much of the heart of God, the nature of God, and the genius of God. And this morning we want to say that we love you, we honor you, we thank the Lord for you. And really is just a small token of our love and affection. There will be gifts provided to all of the men, 18 and older, whether you have kids or not. There's enough to go around. Once everybody has been served, you can feel free to come back and get another one if you would like, for a loved one who couldn't be here today. So I'll probably have, let's see, Mr. Ryan, where AJ is sitting. There's some gifts underneath if you want to make yourself available at one of the stairwells. Each man gets one. You can come back for more once every man has been served. But as we wrap up this message, I say the following. This has been a prayer I have prayed almost every day over the little one that we have and over you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Happy Father's Day. God bless you, men, women, children, and beyond. And we'll see you in the days ahead. Thank you again.